Hi, welcome to another episode of Small Doses with Laura Sell. Wow, we are still talking about COVID-19, and I think we'll be talking about it for a while. I guess the most pressing thing that we're finding in our current events right now is about teachers going back to work. And this has a lot of people concerned. It has me concerned because both of my children are teachers. And I am not excited to have them go back into the classroom. You know, the doctors and the scientists and the professionals are all saying that children need to be in school so that they can learn, and children need to be in school so that they can socialize. Well, we got a lot of unpacking to do during this episode of Small Doses. Let's talk about this word need. You know, basically the things we need are food, clothes, and shelter. Those are the three basic needs. We may need some other things, but everything has a place value. They're saying that children don't necessarily get sick with COVID-19, or if they get sick, it doesn't affect them the same way it affects adults. But they've also said children can likely be super spreaders. So, if children are super spreaders and they are in a classroom, they are in a classroom with adults. Because the last time I checked, children aren't teaching children. So you have adults who are ranging in age from their 20s, possibly to their 60s or 70s, depending on what level of education you're dealing with. So some of these adults likely have pre-existing conditions. And that can range from anywhere from obesity to diabetes to high blood pressure to autoimmune disorders, cancer. There's all kind of things that educators may have as existing conditions. You may have some educators who don't have pre-existing conditions, and great, they're healthy, but that doesn't mean that they can't get COVID-19. And from all of the things we're seeing now on the news from people who have survived COVID-19, we're seeing people who are talking about long-lasting side effects from this disease. So even if I go into my workplace healthy with no pre-existing conditions, it doesn't by any means mean that I want to now have one because I've had COVID-19. So let's talk a little bit about this. The children need to go to school. They need to be educated. They need to socialize. Let's talk about that. Well, the first learning place for everyone should be home. I'm hopeful that all parents teach their children their alphabets and at least how to count from 1 to 10. And, in cases where everyone is air quote normal, and parents have at least a high school diploma, not even necessarily any college. You should then be able to teach your children the alphabet and basic math, and at least up to what you've learned in high school. So as long as children are learning, maybe our cities, states need to focus on helping people get laptops, tablets, so that these children can have virtual learning opportunities. They talk about the socialization. How much socialization is actually going to happen when they have to stay 6 feet apart? They have on masks. They're not going to be able to touch each other and play because that's how children socialize. So what socialization is actually going to go on? If it's just conversation, they can do that via Zoom, on the telephone. We do not need to put hundreds of children in a schoolhouse, in a school building, with teachers, with each other, until we know more about this disease, or until there is some kind of vaccine or some kind of known treatment for people when they get this disease. Because you see, they're still guessing on how to treat this thing. Let's talk about what happens, let's say at an elementary school, and a child reports to school, and when they get there, they don't have a temperature because mom gave them some Tylenol before she dropped them off. She knew they had a temperature. You do know parents already do that, right? Yeah, they do. So this child comes to school, the Tylenol is worn off, and the child has a fever. Well, I've heard from some educators that there's supposed to be a designated room that children who are ill will be taken to. Okay. Now, a fever doesn't mean that this child has COVID. It just means the child has a fever. Let's say there's another child in the building somewhere who starts to cough, and their teacher sends them to this same room. This kid could be coughing because they have asthma, allergies, could be dust particles, dry throat. Kid could be coughing for any reason. And now you've put them in a room with someone who has a fever. So let's say during the course of a day, there are several children that end up in this room for various reasons. Maybe nobody has COVID. Maybe everybody has COVID. Maybe one person has COVID. And if you've got one person in this room with COVID and 5 who may have asthma, a cold, allergies, you've now exposed non-COVID children to a COVID child. Come on. There are too many unknown variables for us to expose our children and our educators to this terrible, terrible virus. You know, there's a lot of questions that people have, and they're valid questions. I asked last week, if a teacher becomes exposed, does this teacher use their sick leave? What will we do with the teachers who already have diagnoses that put them at risk? Are they going to be forced to go into this classroom? Every city, state is not equipped to do virtual learning because there are a lot of massive rural areas where they don't even have towers for these people to have Wi-Fi. So the trillions of dollars that our government spent a couple of months ago, perhaps some of that money should have been spent to provide towers and Wi-Fi access or broadband access to these rural areas. You know, it's a good thing I'm retired, because if I was a teacher right about now, I would be rallying for all teachers who could to stay home. They can't fire everybody. They wouldn't fire everybody. I realize that a lot of teachers are out here, it is their only form of income. I get it. I totally get it. And you have to go. I hate that our government, our society is holding our teachers hostage under the pretense that our children need to be in school. How about this? How about parents? Turn off your cell phone. Turn off your tablets. Turn off your internet. Stop doing IG and Facebook and TikTok for just a little while. Cut the video games off and interact and play with your own kids. What? Yeah, you could do that. The little humans at your house, you could play with them. You could talk to them. Teach them how to play cards. Get some board games. Do some puzzles. Do you know how much you can learn from playing cards, board games, and puzzles? Problem solving. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff you can do. How about parents? Spend more time talking to your children about just anything. There's so many things on the internet you can discover together. Historical facts, language things, mathematics. And I do realize there are some parents who don't have broadband. Well, in that case, how about remember the bookmobile from back in the day? Does that still exist? I don't know. I haven't had school-age children for a while. But if there isn't a bookmobile, why doesn't the library reinstate the bookmobile and drive through these rural communities where children may not have broadband and get them some books, some things that they could do at home? Learning does not have to take place in a schoolhouse. If that was the case, there would not be so many families doing homeschool anyway. Now, so you say, well, some parents have to go to work. I agree. Homeschooling doesn't have to be done by the parents. Maybe there's a parent or a family in your community and they don't work anymore. Maybe a retired educator's in your community. Or maybe a teacher who is at high risk and is not going back into the classroom. Maybe you can get together in your own communities right there in your neighborhoods and solve these problems. That teacher that's not going to go to the classroom or may not be getting that check, how about a group of families, maybe 4 or 5 families come together and allow this person to homeschool your children and you pay them? Come to some kind of price you can agree on, that you can afford, that they can accept. We've got to go back to thinking outside of the box. America has become a famous place, a place everybody wants to go to because we're great, we're smart, we create things. We think of new innovative ways to do things. And I think it is so uncreative and it's so unproductive right now in the midst of COVID to send all of our children back into a petri dish. Yeah, that's what it's going to be, a petri dish. Because those kids are going to come in, kids already germy. Y'all know teachers are out the first few weeks of school because of all the stuff the kids bring. Yeah. So just think how many kids are asymptomatic with COVID. And they're going to bring this to the teachers who already have pre-existing conditions. We've got to be smarter and better. We know that the fish stinks from the head to the tail, and we know the head stinks, and the head doesn't think because it can't. It's not a smart head. So we need to be smart tails. And we need to really be thinking, how can we protect our great resources, our teachers, our counselors, our educators? How can we protect them and create a space where our children can still learn? It doesn't have to be at a school. Stop buying into the children need to socialize, because if they're wearing masks and plastic shields, how much socialization is really going on? They're not going to be able to run around in a play yard and play with each other the way they've become accustomed to. From what I'm hearing, they're going to be eating lunch in their classrooms. Now get this. There's a teacher that I know, and every single year, this person tells me that the air conditioner is broke every year. It's hot. They have to open windows. They have to bring to work their own fans from home. So what happens when you have COVID going on and there's no air condition to circulate the air because the air conditioning is broken? So now you got little COVID droplets just sitting right in place for the next person to breathe in and walk into. Come on, guys. We're better than that. We can be better than that. America has its issues. It has its problems. But one thing is, we have always been innovators. We've always been creative. We've always been creators. You know, there have been some people who've been saying for years that we need to stop having school the same way we've been having it. As much as technology has moved forward in America, our schools really haven't. You know, we're still having 18th, 19th century style school in the classroom with the teacher, and they try to do the implementation of the new technology by bringing in the computers and the laptops. But at the end of the day, you still want children to stand in line and do these things that have been going on since forever. Well, this is our opportunity to find a better way to educate our children. COVID is teaching us a lot. I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk about COVID again and about the things COVID has been teaching us. But let's use this space, this time before August 17th for a lot of cities and states. Let's use this moment in time for COVID to teach us how to better educate our children in a new setting, in a different way. And let's look at socialization differently. We talk about parents at restaurants, everybody's on their cell phone talking. Well, this is the time now for parents to be at home with their children, disconnected from technology, interacting with each other, learning, teaching, growing. I don't believe it is time to send our children back to school. What about you? What do you think? Put it in the comments. Click like, click share, and subscribe. This is another episode of Small Doses with Larcel.